All right. Thank you, guys. This is awesome. This room looks amazing. I'm excited to be here. I'm Tara-Nicholle Nelson. I'm the VP of Marketing for myFitnessPal. Let's talk really briefly about what myFitnessPal is, and then I'm going to let you in on a little personal disruption experiment that I'm going to do tonight. You're going to help me do it. Who has used myFitnessPal? Awesome. Who uses myFitnessPal now? Okay, therein lies the rub. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. But if you don't know what myFitnessPal is the world's most popular nutrition tracker, and it's the world's largest healthy living platform. So we have 90 million users. We have been the #1 health and fitness app on the iTunes store in the US since 2010, and we're a top 5 health and fitness app on iTunes in 72 countries right now. We were recently, a few months ago, we were acquired by the athletic apparel company Under Armour. People are aware of that. And we were sort of acquired with the intention that we would become the cornerstone of a platform they're now calling Under Armour Connected Fitness. So now our sister companies include companies you might have heard of like MapMyFitness, which includes the Map My Run, Ride, and Walk apps, Endomondo, which is a very popular GPS activity tracking app in countries outside of the US, Under Armour Record, which is a new app, and some other stuff that we're still building that I'll tell you about as soon as we build it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to declare to you that tonight is a little bit of a personal disruption experiment for me. What I normally do is I show up to talks and I talk about the business of behavior change and transformational marketing and consumer insights and all of those things. But what I'm really doing is I'm using all of that as an excuse to talk to you about what I really want to talk to you about, which is the actual transformation and actual behavior change and what expansive possibilities are out there for us in our personal lives and all of the tools and tricks that I know about how to live out to the edges of possibility. So tonight we're going to kind of flip what I usually do. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the business of behavior change in myFitnessPal and Under Armour and all of that stuff. But then I'm going to share with you 7 lessons that I've learned from a lifetime of being a transformational consumer and a career of marketing to transformational consumers. And along the way, I'll sprinkle in a bunch of data points if you're here because you're curious about myFitnessPal users. Does that work for everyone? Yeah? I'm going to warn you that I talk a lot about books. I read a lot. My friends call me the bibliotherapist of the group. If you show up and you have an issue and you tell me about your issue, I will tell you, well, I'll probably say like, eat some kale, go to church with me one Sunday just for a cultural experience. And then here's the book you should read. So I reference a ton of books. I reference a ton of like blogs and that kind of stuff. I'm going to start this list that people have actually already started signing up on. I will send an email out afterwards with links to every book that I reference. All right. So, does anyone know a guy named Coach Steve-O? Coach Steve-O is a kettlebell coach and a sports psychologist. He works out of Oakland. And to sort of set context about what I mean when I'm talking about personal disruption, I'm going to tell you a story Steve-O told me about why he got into the field he's in. When Steve-O first started working, he was training like military guys. He was helping people prepare for their military physicals. And he said he used to prepare a list of exercises and give them to them. And the guys would do them. And that was the training. He would tell them what to do and then they would do it. And the first civilian he trained was a nun. And he talks about her as this like really kind of crotchety like Irish nun. And he started to work with her and he would tell her what to do. And she wouldn't do it. And at one point she actually said to him, here's the problem we're having. I actually know what I'm supposed to be doing. I hired you to help me make myself do it. Okay, that's the challenge that we call, in my business anyway, personal disruption. And we talk a lot about disruption in the Valley. Is there anyone here that doesn't think we overuse the term disruption? Yeah, I saw like 0 hands went up. And, the history of that, right, was that Clay Christensen coined the term disruption to mean when an industry was violently transformed, and the violence being that the sort of existing industry giants were unwilling or unable to make the changes that consumers were demanding, so someone else came in and did, right? Then, fast forward some years, and a woman named Whitney Johnson, who was a co-founder of Clay Christensen's firm, she coined the term personal disruption, and she talked a lot about individual people and the experience that individual people are having as they built disruptive skill sets for themselves or dreamed disruptive dreams for their careers. And it was all about career and making your career better. Now, right around the time that she was starting to write about personal disruption, I wrote a blog post on Forbes, and it was about this group that I like to call the transformational consumer. So this is a definition. You might want to, this will be important as we go forward. So the way I talk about transformational consumers is that they are a massive and growing group of people who view all of life as a series of projects to improve their health, their finance, their careers, and their overall prosperity. Okay, these people invest a great deal of time and money engaging with businesses and brands that they believe can help them make the changes that they're having a hard time making on their own. And they're both early adopters, and they're highly influential on the buying behavior of the people in their lives. Okay, so these are people who devote a large amount of their time to personal disruption, but not defined as just trying to level up your career. Right, defined much more broadly as trying to change your habits or change your behavior, making good habits, breaking bad habits, with the specific intention to level up your life, especially when it comes to health or personal finance, areas that we consider like prosperity fields. And you should think of those things very, very broadly, right? Health includes everything from fitness to wellness to stress management to managing chronic diseases, developing confidence. One thing that keeps coming up for us in our research now is that people, very, very broad groups of people, now define health and healthy as including confident or able to, maintain a calm mindset in the face of stress. And finance encompasses everything from personal finance to career to ed tech, right, to skill building, to some of the sharing economy stuff, like using your assets, using your car and your house to the best possible use. Now, the violence when it comes to personal disruption is just that it's hard to do. People are willing to make these changes, they want to make these changes, but they're not always able to. And the point of the Forbes piece that I wrote was to introduce the framework. It was something I had been working on with my clients, and to make the business case that the companies that serve this consumer group well are the companies that actually will also disrupt their industries. Okay, so this is a little bit complicated, but hear me out. The transformational consumer lives at the intersection of personal disruption and business disruption. Okay? I'm seeing heads nod, so tell me if that doesn't make sense. But the idea is that the companies that are willing to double down on helping people make the changes they want to make in their lives are the companies that will also disrupt their industries. Now, because we got that, I'm going to add one more layer of complexity, which is that many of the businesses that will disrupt their industries by serving transformational consumers are also started or operated by transformational consumers, right? Transformational consumers don't just frequent businesses that serve those needs. They start them and they run them. It's every disruptive business that I've worked for has been founded by transformational consumers. And these are what I consider the 5 defining characteristics of transformational consumers. They're people who view life as a series of personal disruption projects. They have an extreme growth mindset. Are you guys familiar with the concept of growth versus fixed mindset? There's a book called Mindset by a woman named Carol Dweck out of Stanford. And the idea of a growth mindset is just that someone with a growth mindset believes that everything about them, every characteristic, their skills, their state in life is malleable and changeable. It can grow and change. Versus people who have a fixed mindset who sort of believe that you're like born excellent or not. And you're sort of playing the cards you were dealt. Transformational consumers focus on prosperity-related transformation, so they are specifically looking to change their habits in these realms, in these areas: health, finance, real estate, career, personal development. And they consistently come to the marketplace looking to engage with businesses around this subject matter. They're going to companies' blogs trying to figure out, what content people have available, businesses have available for them that can help them change their behavior. And they all have an innate or learned bias toward action. They're not, they may be flailing, they may not know exactly what to do, but they're trying to do something. They're trying to make some change. So I like to say, if you know someone who always has a side business or 2 or 3, no matter how good their job is or how good their career is, if you know someone who is constantly getting certified at something or learning a new skill, if you are someone who has been both paleo and vegan, or pegan, which we'll talk about in a bit, that person is a transformational consumer. And I know I'm a transformational consumer. Based on those defining characteristics, how many of you would identify yourself as transformational consumers? Yeah, it's a good looking group. So I want to share with you a little bit about my own story, because it is a story of serial personal disruption. And I'll go from there into the story of myFitnessPal marketing, which you might find interesting if you're working on product. And then I want to talk to you about some of the lessons that I've learned on how to disrupt yourself, because I think it's not a business skill set, it's a human skill set that you can use to change your own life and to inspire change and lead change with any human, whether it's your kids, whether it's your employees, whether it's your customers. Okay, so my story, I think, might actually be the weirdest story you'll ever hear from like a VP of marketing at a venture-backed startup. I was a teenage mom. I had my son when I was 17 years old, so I now actually have a child who is older than me. Do not ask me how that has happened. And I lived in Bakersfield, California, and I had a number of fortunate circumstances that allowed me to finish my education. So I started college when I was 16, had my kid when I was 17. I have bachelor's and master's degrees in psychology. Between undergrad and grad school, I actually lost 60 pounds and became a personal trainer. So I put myself through law school at the University of California, Berkeley as a personal trainer. And I was representing a whole bunch of real estate agents and brokers that I did not feel were treating their work with the respect that they should. So I quit my job and I became a real estate broker. I quit my lawyer job and I became a real estate broker. And I was in the car with buyer after buyer, smart, like young buyers. This was at the top of the market the last time. So this was like probably 2005-ish. And I kept hearing the same things over and over. People weren't trying to buy homes. They wanted this stuff. They wanted prosperity. They were trying to use that one transaction to make all sorts of changes to their families, to their lives, even to their health, to their jobs, they wanted to start businesses, so they needed space for that. They were trying to use this one transaction to make all of those things happen. But the other patterns that I was spotting were patterns in terms of their freak out moments and decision traps and self-sabotage and the things that they would do wrong. And it was painful to kind of watch, especially because I did have a psychology and sort of counseling type background. I thought, gosh, I got to be able to help figure out how to help people do this a little better. And the other agents I was working with, the older agents I was working with, would say to me, you need to just let the market educate your clients. That means let them lose houses, let them fail, and then they will listen to you. And I did not like that. So I took what I knew about psychology. I took what I knew from having been a trusted advisor as a lawyer. And I drew up this little curriculum. It was a little flowchart of a real estate transaction, which every agent has a flowchart of a real estate transaction. But mine was annotated for things that were not events. It was annotated for how you might feel on a certain night and what wrong decision you might be tempted to make at a certain time, and how the seller would feel if you were the buyer that night too, right? The night that you sign the contract, everybody is upset. You just agreed on the contract, but the seller's upset. They think that they took too little. You're upset. You think you paid too much. That will happen. Trust me. And so by helping people understand, I had this little formula. It was what to expect, mindset management. Helping people understand in advance how they would feel got a lot of credibility right? They kind of were like, oh, she gets this, she gets me, maybe her advice actually is right. And people started to experience their transactions with a little more ease. So I wanted to scale my real estate business. So I wrote that up into a book, and I self-published that book. And someone at HGTV, the cable network, found that book and called me up, and they asked if they could license the content of that book to be seed content for a website they were starting up. And so I did that for years. They hired me as a digital marketing consultant. I converted this 400-page book into hundreds of web articles, video web series, PR campaigns. I became their PR spokesperson. I learned everything there was to learn about driving digital business results with PR and content, something we now just call content marketing, but nobody did that really at that time. So that's what I did. And then I was hired away from there to come do the same kind of work at Trulia.com, the real estate search engine you guys all know, where I managed consumer content and PR and was the company's spokesperson. I left there to go work for their PR agency, running a digital and content practice, representing all sorts of venture-backed startups doing content and PR type work. And then I started my own firm called Rethink Multimedia, and I had the best clients ever. Trulia was a client, Eventbrite was a client. And one day myFitnessPal called and they wanted to talk to me. So the challenge at myFitnessPal was this. MyFitnessPal at the time they called me, this was in 2013, had 45 million users and no marketing department. Like no marketing team. So they kind of called me, and the CEO was like, so yeah, we have this thing, and we're like doing this stuff. It's really awesome. I spent $20 on Google ads once, and it was like so expensive. So I just stopped. And I'm like, well, I guess that paid off. That was a bet. You had a solid bet. But he was like, everybody knew that I was like the transformational consumer chick, because I was out there talking about that all the time. You guys have to start looking at consumers through this new lens. So he said, well, you tell me what marketing should look like at myFitnessPal. So I sat there for 3 months and learned about their market. And I did a bunch of proof of concept tests and saw what worked and saw what didn't work. And I made a recommendation to him. Oh, sorry, that was supposed to be about me. I made a recommendation to him that they not do what everybody else does. Everybody focuses their marketing programs at first on growth, on user acquisition. But they had 45 million users. They didn't need to acquire new users. What they did need to do was to deal with the challenge that every digital health company has, and that is the challenge of keeping existing users engaged. That's the challenge of who has ever used myFitnessPal versus who is using myFitnessPal now, right? So people ask me all the time who our competitors are. And I say that our competitor will never be another app, ever. Our enemy is all of the things that keep people from living healthy lives and eating healthy foods. So our enemy is like biology, right? Like fat is delicious. Sugar tastes great. Eating fat and sugar releases the same chemicals in your brain. It activates the same reward centers as cocaine and sex. So I'm up against that. My app is up against that, right? And there are two levers that you can pull when it comes to creating behavior change around your health. You can pull the food lever or you can pull the exercise lever. And ideally, obviously, you would pull both. But if you can only pull one, food is actually the most important one. There are all these things about that in the training world, right? Abs are made in the kitchen. You can't out-exercise a shitty diet. These are real things that trainers have said forever, and now all the studies are coming in and they're saying the same thing. Food is the most important one, but food is the hardest one, right? Not only do fat and sugar taste good, unhealthy food is everywhere. Have you been to Home Depot lately? Why are there Snicker bars in the checkout counter? Like, Snickers don't have anything to do with home improvement, but they're there. There's a multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar marketing machine that is behind unhealthful foods and making sure that they're very convenient, more convenient than healthful foods. So those are the sorts of things that we're up against. Millions of people worldwide are willing to pay money, to download, to do whatever, to sign up for programs, to get control over their eating, but they download them and then they stop using them. That's what happens. So my proposal was that myFitnessPal build a marketing program around engaging their existing users with transformational content. And I say transformational content as opposed to educational content because because people do generally know what it is that they need to do, right? It's not about that. Creating behavior change is not about just an action plan, although that's helpful. You have to have that stuff. It's about capacity building. It's about mindset management. It's about belief rehabilitation. People are traumatized because they've been out there trying to lose weight for their whole entire lives and they don't actually believe they can do it, right? It's about like leveraging resources and deploying them. And it's about doing all of that stuff on this goal of change while you still live your everyday life, right? You still got to like feed the kids and go to work and do all the stuff that you were normally having to do. So we focused on transformational content. It is intended to be very problem solution oriented, and it's hard. It's hard to do well, but it can be done. And if you do it, here's what happens. So here's another book reference. There's a book by a guy named Kevin Roberts, who's the global chairman of Saatchi & Saatchi, the ad firm. And the book is called Love Marks. The idea of a love mark is a brand that transcends brand status, right? It has loyalty from its users beyond all reason compared when you look at it in light of what the company actually provides. So like, Apple is a computer company, but people love it beyond all reason for a computer, right? So the love and respect that you earn from consumers when you are consistently delivering them content that helps them make the changes they want to make gets you love mark status. And love mark status gets you these metrics. So Kevin Roberts would say that the way you know if your company has love mark status is this. If you take your product away from people, they protest. Well, that's like really vivid, but not doable. Like we're not going to close the app down to see if people protest. So my suggestion was that we look at these metrics, which are really important to like basically every tech product company, engagement metrics like daily active users, weekly active users, monthly active users, NPS, and word of mouth. For us, we do no paid marketing at myFitnessPal. Since I've been there, we've gone from 45 million to 90 million users. Word of mouth is critical to manage and maintain that number and drive it up. User-generated content, return visits, time on site, time in app, and upsells. NPS is Net Promoter Score. So it's a measurement of how likely people are to promote or recommend your product to other people in their lives. Yeah. So I knew we had done it before. So when I was at Trulia, and I usually use this slide when I'm teaching content marketers, usually the slide is captioned, message is greater than medium, just to show that this is like an old school medium, right? Like it's a blog. We sent emails to like drive traffic to a blog. But at Trulia, we created the most read single author real estate blog on the web. I mean, I don't know if you can see that, but there were like 12 million views or something on that, and that was a couple years ago. So what we did when I came to myFitnessPal was this. To do transformational content right, you have to know what problems, what frictions people are having along the way so you can solve them with your content. But you do have to know first. And myFitnessPal had only ever done sort of user panels with people in San Francisco, which I felt was very misguided. Because San Franciscans, while an attractive people, are not representative of anyone else in the world on anything, anywhere, ever. Like, we pay $28 for a salad, like it's nobody's business. Why not? Our relationship to personal technology and our bodies is very different from anyone, anywhere else. And myFitnessPal is like one of the most mainstream sort of middle American, middle world apps that I've ever worked on for sure. Like I kind of joke, but it's not a joke, that the professional athletes that work out at the studios I work out at in Oakland use it. My mom and her Bible study fellowship class in Bakersfield, they're using it too. And so, we had to start to get out of San Francisco and get into the mindsets of people who are on this journey from unhealthy to healthy. So we started this customer ethnography project, which has been an odyssey. I think We're probably like 16 months into it now, and we're still doing it. Some girls from my team just came back from Omaha, Nebraska, talking to people because our business questions, our need for like business intelligence evolves. So we continue to go out and talk to people in different places. And these are not just myFitnessPal users. It was the qualification criteria here is, are you trying to be healthier than you are? So we went out and talked to people and talked to people and talked to people. And we talked to them about what their biggest obstacle was. Just interesting side note. The biggest obstacle people tell us to living a healthy life is cost, which is something we had never heard in San Francisco. So we have now inventoried every step of this journey. We have identified these phases. We classify where people are on the journey and where groups and market segments are on this journey based on whether they are struggling in their efforts and or succeeding or not succeeding in their efforts. So you can see those kind of two axes there. And we've inventoried basically everything that's recurring. What are the initial catalysts that take people from inert to the next stage, which is roller coaster to nowhere, which sounds so bad, but at least they're trying. They're struggling. They're not inert. They may not be succeeding, but they are trying. And what are the things that trigger people from that roller coaster to making actual progress where it's still a struggle, but they're actually like doing some stuff, And then what are the things that trigger people from habit formation to effortful ease? We have inventoried all of those things. And if you get the MyFitnessPal newsletter or read the MyFitnessPal blog, you'll see every single thing that we post to that blog is responsive to it attempts to eliminate a friction that people are experiencing at some point on this path. We know which things work to help people get over some of these, make progress from one stage to the next stage. And so we program content to that. For example, cooking. We have data that says that people who cook and log a home-cooked recipe on MyFitnessPal are 60% more likely to stay within their calorie goal, their fat goal, their sugar goal, their sodium goal on a day that they log a recipe than on a day that they don't. So out of that data, wow, I just got really loud. Out of that data, we have built new product features to support people who want to log recipes, and we also do a lot of cooking and recipe content on the blog. And we evaluate sort of how the recipe content performs and continue to level it up from there. So this is just some of the kinds of content. We do a number of things that actually showcase the insights of what does work for people so they can know that as a part of this community, they're getting that data. And then we have everything about that cookbook on the left is optimized based on data that we know. We know people respond to calorie counts and titles. We know there's all of those sorts of things. So we started this content program early in 2014 with literally just started a blog from scratch. And now we're at about 10 million monthly uniques on that blog. We've used it to drive a 22% increase in weekly active users of the actual app. We know how to get the content exactly to people where they are. We deliver it to them by email. We deliver it to them by social media. We cross-promote. We are starting to do some syndication, and we've actually built the content back into the app in several different ways so we can get it to people at the times that they need it. And now my job has changed. So now my job is to scale the engagement, the content-based engagement programming that way I do at MyFitnessPal across to the other Under Armour Connected Fitness blogs. All right. So now I'm going to jump into talking about the things that I have learned about how to disrupt yourself. I want to emphasize again, that this is not just a skill set that I think you can use for building a product or marketing, although I think you can use it for that. We have used it for that. I think it's a skill set that you use to help change people's lives, whether it's your own or your employees, or the people that you serve at your company. So the first insight that I want to share is to start from love, to stop comparing, and to experiment from there. Okay, one thing that I say a lot and that we sort of promote in our content is the concept that you can't hate yourself skinny. It actually doesn't work. You can like try it, but it doesn't, but people did try it a lot. It doesn't work. So that's what tends to happen is people are really upset. They see a picture of themselves or they see themselves in a mirror or they see a reflection and they're very taken aback at what's happened. Like things get away from people. They don't realize that they've gained that much weight. And out of that place of like self-critique and self-hate, they try to make these changes. But the thing is like living a healthy lifestyle is a really long game, right? If you're trying to build new habits out of critique and hate doesn't actually work. Trying to come at them from a place of like self-love and self-care turns out to be much, much more sustainable, right? And so one thing that we do to encourage sort of people to experiment and to find their version of healthy is that myFitnessPal generally operates on a diet agnostic basis. Right? Our data set is actually the largest longitudinal study of health behavior in human history, anywhere ever. We have all of these millions of people logging their food, logging what they eat, logging their weight loss results. And never in that data, and we have looked and looked and looked, have we seen real proof that any one given diet is significantly superior to any other given diet. We do see different habits that are sort of foundational to people being successful. Planning your meals helps. Cooking helps. Being social helps. I'll talk to some of those data points as we go through this. But we don't have proof that, even though I think everybody should do what I do and be vegan before 6, which is my own like diet program of paleo and vegan before 6, the nutritionists who report to me, if we go to any restaurant that has a fried chicken sandwich on the menu, they're ordering that fried chicken sandwich. And they're dietitians, right? So we operate on a very non-judgmental, very diet agnostic basis and encourage people to just try different things, find a way to be healthy that works for you versus trying to compare yourself to the healthy person that you know who's eaten a bunch of stuff that you just will never eat. And that's the thing, because it's such a long game, it's a lifelong process. If you hate what you're trying to do to be healthy or to disrupt your life in any other way, you just actually won't do it, ultimately. So don't do that. All right. The second point is to focus on one thing. Focus on one thing to create a transformational snowball effect. Sometimes I will talk to people and they'll be like, wow, you were a single mom in Bakersfield and now you're the VP of marketing for this fancy company. Right, but there was a lot of stuff that happened from there to here. And it's like those little things, those little goals that you set for yourself. Like when I got into UC Berkeley School of Law, that was a big deal and made me believe that there were like other things that I could do, right? So it is a transformational snowball effect. The New York Times has this great article about paleo people and how they often start out just eating a paleo diet. And in a few months, they're living a whole life of like ancestral health practices. They're like quitting their night jobs because it's like against these principles because it works. And if something works, it gets that momentum going where you want to do more, you want to make more changes, and you believe that you can. So we like to encourage people to pick one thing. Don't set out to lose 50 pounds. Set out to become aware of your eating practices. We tell people all the time, do not try to lose, don't set the goal of like, I'm going to try to lose all of this weight and think about that every day and all of the things you have to do. Why not just decide, I'm going to track what I eat this week, right? Our coaches even tell people, just track your breakfast for a week. And we have data that supports this. 88% of people who track at least 7 days lose weight. Not necessarily trying to make food changes, just the act of tracking creates action and behavior change. And I'm going to talk to you about why. Number 3 is to understand the power of pattern spotting. There's a thing I like to call my fitness moments of clarity. We have like monthly user panels at myFitnessPal, and we tend to organize them by like users who all have one problem or all had one experience. So we've had 6 people who all started using myFitnessPal because they had a heart attack, or 6 people who all came to myFitnessPal and lost 100 pounds. People who have over 100 friends on myFitnessPal. So we have like themes like that. And we hear, it almost doesn't even matter what the issue is. We hear the same exact moment of clarity from all of those groups. I could not believe I was drinking so many calories. Juice is a big thing, but also drinking alcohol. Couldn't believe I was drinking that many calories. Kate Hudson gave some interviews and said that she lost 15 pounds using myFitnessPal because she realized she was eating 5,000 calories a day, mostly in almonds. That's like so many almonds. Every time I like remember that, I'm like, that's so many almonds. But just the power of the pattern spotting is like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to eat that many almonds, right? It's a lot. Like, almonds are highly caloric, but what she said was she's on set and she's trying to eat a healthy snack. Almonds seem healthy, right? So she's also just magically gained an extra 15 pounds. And she's trying to figure out what happened. So she started tracking them and realized she was actually eating, probably 3,500 calories more than she should in a day based on almonds. So just the power of spotting that pattern creates some like action and behavior change for people. But it's not, and one thing that we do see a lot is this sort of evolution for people from just noticing the pattern to just making a decision in their heads. I call it the make it count rule, right? Like, if I'm going to eat something, it's got to count. It either has to like get me toward my nutrition goals, it has to fill me up, or it better be freaking delicious, right? But what people do is the pattern spotting, the power of the pattern spotting is that they sort of unclick off of that autopilot eating. Right? Just like that empty eating that's like, it's not good, it's not filling, it's not nutritious, I'm just eating it because it's there. That's the thing that the pattern spotting stops. It doesn't mean you never eat good things again. It just means you really want them to count. It better be truffle fries. Sorry, that got personal. So the thing about this is that it's not just for eating things, right? None of these rules are. But this one in particular, I have found is really powerful when you think about it outside of healthy, food and fitness decisions. Like, I notice when I hear myself complain about the same thing several times, that is a flag that something needs to change. Either I need to stop complaining or I need to do something, do some work. Right? And one practice that I found is really helpful for this, especially like in career stuff and in creativity things, like when you get stuck on a problem or, a writing project, whatever it is the practice of morning pages. Are you guys familiar with that? Do you know that? There's a book called The Artist's Way by a woman named Julia Cameron. I think she should call it The Innovator's Way because it's all creativity. It's literally the same thing. But it's really just a free writing exercise. You create a discipline around getting up in the morning and like just writing. She says write freehand. I can't do that. I don't know how to write anymore. So I do mine in Google Docs. But it's a really interesting way to like archive and go back and see when I'm writing about the same issue over and over and over, because that's just what comes to mind. And it's like, your job is to spit words. You do not think about it. You don't think twice about it. You don't edit. There's none of that. You just get them out of your brain. And when you spot patterns there, that's like stuff you need to be working on in your life. Okay. Number 4 is to reset your presets. People who get to that effortful ease stage on the journey from unhealthy to healthy, share in common that they end up creating like little simple rules or practices that kind of position the healthy choice, the healthy behavior, as their default behavior. Okay? They make water their default beverage. That's a very common one. They make whole foods their default. So they, like, no boxed foods is a very common like rule. They don't stock. If I say the term kryptonite food, does that resonate for anyone? Kryptonite food is like that food. Someone said one. Corn chips. So, like, my boss's kryptonite food is pizza. He can't eat one piece of pizza. Ever. I'm eating that pizza. That's what it is. So if I get started, like, I am not powerless to, not me, this is him, right? He's powerless to resist pizza. Many people say ice cream is their kryptonite food. They can't just eat like one serving of it. It's like a thing they can't turn off. So many people who are successful at myFitnessPal ultimately don't keep kryptonite foods in their homes. So we do hear a lot of people say, I just don't ever buy ice cream for at home. If I want to eat it out someplace, I can, but never at home. I don't have juice at home. So it's just really, or eating before parties is actually a really common one. People who have a hard time with like social eating and drinking will make sure that they go to parties full. So they limit kind of what they eat that way. This is just about developing like habits and rituals that are like your default behaviors that sort of pull in the direction of the life that you want to have or the practices that you want to have, right? So I have a bunch of these myself. My friends know I will go out to dinner with them any night of the week if we do a class first. So if you want to come out to dinner with me, you have to spin or dance first. We have to go on a hike. Something has to go down. And shifting from sitting to standing as a default has also been one, like making sure that we have like we have the chef pads all over my house and laptop stands all over the house on the counters so that it's actually easy to just stand. Okay. Tell yourself a different story. Now, book recommendation here is the 4 agreements. Well, I guess there's now the 5 agreements, or the 5th agreement is the new one or something. I don't know that one. But the 4 agreements is a very small book with really powerful rules in it. And one of the agreements is to be impeccable with your words, which doesn't just mean do what you say you are going to do. It means to not ever use your words against anyone or against yourself. And so I bring this one up because it's really common for people who say that they're like stuck or they have a thing they're trying to like change they want to do, and then they're so negative, they're like literally using their own words as like weapons against themselves. I actually was at Under Armour's headquarters in Baltimore this morning, and this woman and I were walking like through the gym area, and she said, oh, there's this like awesome gym, it's Under Armour, right? There's this like pit, I don't know. There's this pit area in the gym where you actually can do all these cool things, but you have to climb into it or out of it on a rope. That's the only way to get into it or out of it. It's like a floor below, but there's no stairs. I don't know. It's this thing. And the woman kept saying like, oh, I'm terrified of that thing. Like, I so want to go in there, but I think I'll break my ass. She kept saying all these things. And I was just like, well, you're weaving this story about yourself. You know what I mean? And so there are a lot of areas in life and in your aspirations where there may not actually be a cultural narrative for the outcome that you want. Okay, there is no cultural narrative in our culture for somebody who was really overweight and lost all the weight and lived happily ever after and released that issue out of their lives. There's not that. The cultural story we know is the person who's been struggling with their weight their whole lives, right? So at myFitnessPal, we try to do the job of rewriting that cultural narrative. We publish a lot of user success stories of people who actually just successfully dealt with their problem and now have had all these what we call non-scale victories. We try to get people focused outside of the scale on how their lives get better. But you don't have to believe the cultural narrative for your own life. I was actually really old before I realized that being a Black woman was supposed to be a disadvantage. And I just decided that was someone else's story. That's not relevant to me. So that's what this Hear What You Want campaign is about. If you don't know the campaign, you should like Google it. It's awesome. It's a Beats campaign, Beats by Dre campaign about all these athletes who are challenging the sort of media narrative about them and using the headphones, obviously, to tell their own story and disregard the other story. All right, share your journey with safe people. There's a book called Safe People. You should read it. It's about this is really about building community and obliterating shame. Many people have a lot of shame around their weight and their goals that they haven't achieved in their lives. And if you've read any of Brené Brown's work, she talks a lot about how shame can actually not survive once you start talking about the facts underlying it. So sharing your journey with safe people is a big deal. At myFitnessPal, the data we see is this. People who have 1 friend on the app lose 2 times the weight. People who have 10 friends on the app lose 4 times the weight. People who have 10 friends on the app and are active on the app for the first 30 days on it lose 22.5 pounds on average, which is a lot. So there are some really basic things you can do to get the support you need or the competition you need, as the case may be, by sharing your journey, whatever that journey is, with safe people. And here's my last one. Take a strategic sabbatical. A lot of people in tech that are taking time off, they have, they're fortunate, they're able to take a moment. And they want to press pause and get some direction on life. And they press pause and they come out without any more direction. I have actually kind of gotten taking a strategic sabbatical down to a science. There's like literally a week-long process that I've gone through with my last few career changes and big projects. And I'm actually taking a bunch of people up to Campo Vita at Hopland in a couple of months to take a strategic sabbatical with me. So if you are interested in doing that, email me. Here's my email address, tara@strategicsabbatical.com. Do I have time for questions? I would love to take a few questions. Yes, sir.
Comments or how much almond? It's 7 calories per almond, so it's about 720.
That's like so many almonds, right? 720 almonds she would have to eat. Are you looking at myFitnessPal? We're going to pretend he's looking at myFitnessPal. Yes.
About companies who are willing to disrupt.
I mean, look at myFitnessPal. So Weight Watchers was a multi-billion dollar company, is no longer. Because there are all these free apps that actually do what they did better than they do, that are free. So like by serving the consumer's purest need, being on their phone ever they are, creating the food database that makes it so like our service just actually really works. We have disrupted a major industry.
The question was just then about the industries that you're giving them what they want.
Yes. Well, giving them what they want, meaning like these changes, especially using technology to make these changes much more effectively than other businesses have been able to. There's nothing that really would have stopped some of these other businesses from creating these technologies before startups did, And so those industries end up disrupted by companies that see the technology and the transformational potential of it and deliver on it. I know you. That's right.
Anyway, do you think for other activities, sort of this way?
You see it in personal finance a little bit. I mean, like Mint really came in and did what the bank apps probably could have done. I'll be honest, I was a real estate broker, and Trulia and Zillow came in and did what the real estate industry could have done. So I really think that all of these prosperity-related areas are areas that are ripe for this type of disruption.
Is there like a week, here what you say so far as things to focus on? Like, is it certain people?
Yes. There is a failure of imagination. People fail to imagine that their lives could be different than they actually are. That is the failure. It's not that they are failures, but I think, our culture tells people that. Maybe their parents said that. Someone said it to them. They've been saying it to themselves over and over. And there's just a thing where, we talk about, there's like a thing people say now, the struggle is real. And my friends know that I'm very likely to be like, it's ish. It's real-ish. Maybe it's not. What if it's not? Why not just experiment with the fact that maybe that struggle doesn't have to be, what if you could actually release that? But a lot of these things are psychological, and there is a lot of belief rehabilitation that I think needs to happen. One more. You know what? I didn't take any from over there. She's being really aggressive, so I'm going to take that question, and I'll talk to you guys afterwards.
every day?
Well, one of the decisions that we made was that we needed to redefine what engagement actually meant. Because early at not early, actually even when I came, myFitnessPal is 10 years old this year. So it's like the oldest startup ever. When I came to myFitnessPal, engagement was defined as somebody logged a food or an exercise. And so I kind of made the argument, look, like what if someone is engaging, if this is the universe of people who will log a food and exercise, this is the universe of people who will consume health and fitness content or still use our content, right, to be healthier. So we actually redefined our active user metrics to include people who are engaging with content, not just completing a food or fitness log. But that said, the other, the 50 or 60 engineers at the company do nothing but work on removing frictions from the food and fitness logging process. Everything from working with data science and engineering teams to make sure that we're like deduplicating and verifying foods and making sure that the food entries are really complete. Every angle on, muscle memory, as we have evolved our UX and UI, we've really tried to take into account that many people have muscle memory, they just literally go and log without looking. So we've tried to really be thoughtful about that as we've changed things. There are a lot of people at myFitnessPal that do nothing but think about how to remove friction from the food and fitness logging process. Syncing has been a big one, like making sure that people can connect accounts with other apps and with wearable devices. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the barcode scanner. So myFitnessPal was the first food logging app that had a barcode scanner on it, and I think it actually changed the game. Okay.
Tara, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.